painting, music, drawing, animation, television, dance, movies. Art comes in so many shapes and sizes and is supposed to make you feel something. Whether that's looking at a piece and going, ooh, that looks nice, or something that will have you sitting and pondering for days about your own human experience. And like many others, I love art, but there's one form of art that is ingrained in me more than any other, and that's video games. Now, there's probably a lot of people watching this who just rolled their eyes at the screen, but please stick with me and let me teach you how to appreciate this relatively new way to create art. And if you didn't roll your eyes, you're still welcome to come along on this journey of appreciating so many great video games. In 1972, Pong was created. You're probably asking yourself, how is this even art? It's a couple pixels on a screen. But is it not art because it's not visually appealing? Or is it not art because it doesn't have any meaning? Okay, this is getting a little convoluted, so let's make an actual basis on what art is. Merriam-Webster defines art as the conscious use of skill and creative imagination, especially in the production of an aesthetic object or objects. The key word here is especially. It doesn't say specifically. So I'd say we could throw Pong in this definition of art because yes, it was a conscious use of skill from the talented coders who created it. And they had to combine their imagination and that skill to create a computer game. But you know, we all know damn well Pong isn't really aesthetically pleasing. If we want to instead use the definition that art needs to have meaning to be art, I would say Pong has a lot of meaning. I mean, it was the beginning of video games as a medium, the beginning of a multi-billion-dollar worldwide market that almost half the world participates in on a regular basis. That's a lot of meaning if you ask me. And since then, technology has evolved exponentially. We went from 8-bit to 16-bit to 3D, from only being able to have 4 audio layers in a game to full orchestrated soundtracks, from these polygonal stretched textures to some of the most detailed, intricate 3D worlds ever seen. And I think the further we go along, the more video games fit into our original definition. I think this is a great place to start and talk about one of the first factors that makes video games art: the visuals. Most art is visual. I mean, obviously not all of it. Music is not a visual experience, but movies and TV and paintings, all of these things require you to look at them. And for video games, visuals are really important because this is something you are going to be looking at for hours on end. Now, if you're a game developer, there's usually 2 main routes you can take for visuals. Have your game look as realistic as possible, or go with a more stylistic approach. Now, I have 2 examples for these paths you can take. One being Red Dead Redemption 2, and the other Hollow Knight Silksong. Silksong is a game about a bug who is a half-god, fighting to crumble an oppressive religious empire while fighting possessed bugs. This is too silly of a premise to have realistic graphics. The funny part about this game, though, is it's really depressing, and I think it's a fun way to mask these themes through this cartoonish style that it has. The environments in this game are super detailed and all hand-drawn, which just creates this really beautiful atmosphere. The combat is really simple on the surface, and this cartoonish style makes it a lot more readable to the player. It makes the boss's attacks much more manageable. The projectiles are easier to see. It also really helps the characters and enemies pop out of the environment, which makes exploring a lot of fun, because you never know what cute little dude you're gonna find. It works so well because so many of these areas have such a desolate feel to them, that when you find these areas that pop with color, it feels like crack. Now compare this to Red Dead 2. This game is a gritty western set on the cusp of the 1900s, as the outlaw lifestyle is dying out due to the rise of law enforcement. Now this is a game that would not work as well if it was cartoon bugs. This game is slow. You gotta ride your horse around, talk to NPCs. Every movement Arthur makes is methodical and detailed. But the plus side of this slow pace is getting to soak in this incredible environment that Rockstar Games created. If this was a lesser game, these portions would be a slog to get through. But damn, look at that view. Having this beautiful environment in this game just heightens everything around it. The story feels more grounded. The exploration feels more rewarding. The towns feel more lively. It is a game world unlike any other, but with hundreds of designers and coders. You cannot tell me that this shit is not art. And in the same way, how one guy painstakingly drew all of these beautiful areas in Silksong. Now, while visuals are an easy thing to point to for the artistic merit of a game, it is absolutely not the only reason. Being able to make areas in a game not only look good, but feel intuitive to play is a whole art in itself. Which brings me to my next factor, level design. And a game I would like to highlight for this is Neon White. Neon White is a platformer that kind of disguises itself as a shooter. This genre is typically referred to as a movement shooter. You pick up cards that become your arsenal throughout a level. The trick is that discarding these cards give you some sort of movement ability. In most of these levels, you aren't shooting enemies, but rather flying through them as fast as possible using all your discards. The magic of the level design here is how incredibly simple it is to tell where you're supposed to be going. Textures are simple, there's never too many assets on your screen at once. You can tell whether you're in a city or a temple, but no matter where you are, your path is always clear. They also use the same pieces of environment often in multiple different levels to help you find your path forward. If you see a path of water, you know you can get a speed boost. Or if you see red planks or red door, you know you're supposed to smash through that with one of your cards. Even picking up cards from the ground gives you a hint on what direction you're supposed to go next. Whether it's a ground slam telling you you're probably going down, or a dash forward hinting that you need to cross a big gap. And as the game goes on, they build on this arsenal. You get a rocket launcher that discards into a grapple. The slow build of adding these mechanics and easing you into them as the levels go on make for one of the most incredibly intuitive final bosses in any game I've played. It is one of the most impeccable levels in the entire game. If you're watching someone else play this and you've never played it, this looks extremely overwhelming. But after going through this game and picking up on all the tricks and moves, it just creates this incredibly smart collage of everything built up in this game. Now, it's a quick glazing for a second. The story in this game is, it's something.
You wouldn't really abandon a cute girl like me, would you?
I can't lie, I was skipping like 90% of the dialogue playing this game. The story isn't great, the graphics aren't incredible, but does this mean this game has less artistic merit than another? No! I think disregarding something as central as level design when we're talking about the merit of video games as an art form is exactly why they don't get equal respect when it comes to other forms of art. From an outside perspective, you aren't thinking about all these factors. How the player is going to interact with the world the developers built. How to make a level not overwhelming. How to give hints for puzzles without feeling like you're telling people what to do. Building a nuanced, interesting game world while still finding a balance between challenge and annoyance is truly an art that only the best games can achieve. I also think people can overlook aspects of games because you can get these pieces in other forms of entertainment. Story game, just watch a movie. But honestly, I think story games can achieve something that you can't do with television or movies. And look, love it or hate it, I think Last of Us 2 is a perfect example of this. The story in Last of Us 2 only works because it's being told through a 40-hour game. Spending so much time with these characters, especially one that you are predisposed to hate at the beginning of the game, works so well for me because you get to see all these events through her perspective. It makes the end so powerful because you've spent so much time with both of these characters, and it would just not hit the same in a different format. You aren't sitting back and watching these characters like you would in a show or a movie. You are the one putting yourself in their shoes. And whether you think they did this effectively or not in this game, this is a type of storytelling you can only achieve through video games. Interactivity just adds a whole new dimension to storytelling. I think this is further proved through the second season of The Last of Us show. The story beats in the show just feel so stripped compared to the game, because it was never meant to be a show. This game was written with the fact that it's a video game in mind and not an 8-episode HBO show. Ellie's descent into rage works so well because you are the one pulling the trigger. You are the one behind her actions. You can't distance yourself from them like you can in a show. And on the other side of that, like I mentioned earlier, learning to empathize with Abby and playing as her through hell and back allows you to connect with her in a way that a show cannot achieve. It is just a fully unique medium of storytelling that can achieve things in a much less conventional way than TV or movies. Little Nightmares is a game with zero dialogue, but you can see what happens in the world because you experience it yourself. While TV and movies definitely have the ability to do this sort of visual storytelling, it's a different story when you are the one smack dab in the middle of this world. One section of this game has you going through this kitchen with these nasty ass chefs. You see them preparing food and washing dishes. It's just this super detailed game that is amplified by the fact that you're just a little dude in this giant world. You then go into the restaurant that the chefs are preparing the food for. You see the customers mindlessly walk in like zombies and eat anything they can get their hands on, including you. This world is just hostile and dark and scary, and you can feel that because you're the one experiencing it. You don't need dialogue to tell the story. You can watch all these incredible animations and visuals while exploring the world to piece it together yourself. Okay, I think you get it now. I'm pretty sure I said interactivity makes storytelling more interesting like 7 times. But unique storytelling also isn't the only thing that makes video games art. Neither graphics or level design. The marriage of all of these factors is what makes video games work. They all have this sort of symbiotic relationship between each other. And depending on what you are trying to achieve with your game, some might take more priority over others. This is what makes it such an incredible medium for art. One factor that I think gets overlooked quite a lot that I haven't talked about yet is gameplay. You're probably looking at your screen going, what the fuck are you talking about? That's like the whole point of playing video games, is the gameplay. And you're right, but I don't think people take into account how much it takes to make a game feel good to play. In platformers, you need to take into account the weight and the height and the length of jumps. Whether holding down the jump button makes you go farther, or if the jump is static. Can you move around in the air after a jump? How much time are you in the air? How responsive is the character? How do the footsteps sound? How do they interact with other platforming pieces in this world? If it's a shooter, how does the reload feel? How can you move around in an environment? How do the guns recoil? How do they sound? What are the vibrations on the controllers when you shoot different guns? There's so many little things that have to fit together to make a game feel good that the average player wouldn't think about. And that's the point. You're not supposed to think about it. You're supposed to pick up the controller and say, I don't know why, but this feels good to play. And if that's how you feel, then the developers did their job. And my very favorite example of this has to be Super Mario Odyssey. Well, this obviously isn't exclusive to Nintendo. The 3D Mario games put a big focus on really polishing the gameplay before they build out a game. On the surface, Mario's moveset is really simple. He has a jump, and he can throw his hat. But the more you play, the more you can find out how much you can actually do with such a simple moveset. You can jump out of a squat or a roll to launch yourself forward. You can ground pound to jump higher. Throw your hat, leap onto your hat to jump off of it. Throw it again to get even more airtime. A movement system like this that is so simple but so complex is rivaled only by its successor, Donkey Kong Bonanza. It is incredible how they achieved making a game that is so accessible but rewards you immensely for pushing the limits of it. The main goal of this game is collecting moons, and you need about less than a quarter of all of the moons in the entire game to beat it. There's so much optional content in this game and ways to test your skill. It is incredible. Now, obviously, it's a Mario game. It's not really that difficult. But the fun doesn't necessarily come from the challenge. It comes from testing your own limits. Can I make it over this ledge? Is there another way to get to this power moon? The joy of the mechanics in this game is seeing how far you can take them and what you can do to differently achieve a goal. And the best part is how fluid it all feels. Mario is so responsive. He can stop and turn on a dime. Everything about this game just works. And that's what makes it so special. Imagine if this game was exactly the same, but Mario just controlled like shit. His movements were stiff, he could only jump a specific distance, there was far less combos to his moveset. It would not be an enjoyable game at all. Adding all this nuance to such a simple moveset, painting it with good sound effects and enjoyable platforming is not something that's easy to pull off. Remember our definition of art? I think the use of Mario's hat as movement is definitely creative and imaginative. And it definitely takes skill and effort to create such a smooth and easy to control character. It is just incredible talent through and through. And well, yes, like I said, gameplay is the most important part of a game. The average person isn't thinking about all these details that makes it enjoyable for them. And it's yet another reason why I don't think games get the credit they deserve. Another piece of this complex puzzle that is video games is music. Now, obviously, music is an art form all in itself, but when you're making music, you're expecting people to listen to it with their full attention. Music for a game is generally for the background. You need to be able to hear the sound effects and audio cues in a game above all else. But if it's too subtle, it can get stale really quick. To bring up the little Italian man one more time, Mario Kart World has an impeccable soundtrack. They simply did not need to go this hard, but they did. This soundtrack has over 300 songs on it. All of them live recorded, and it's just ridiculous. The Knockout Tour in this game has you going through an entire trip in the open world area. Every location has these beautiful transitions between the songs. And again, they did not need to do this. You won't be hyper-focused on these songs while you're playing. It's Mario Kart. You're racing your friends, you're yelling over the top of each other. But the magic of these songs is how they are gonna dig themselves into your brain until you're humming them in the shower. That's the best part of a video game soundtrack, is you know you're gonna be hearing these songs over and over again, They need to be catchy. And if you play video games often, I'm sure there's so many tracks that you could have played in front of you and would immediately recognize it, even if you haven't thought about it in years. Other than being catchy, video game music needs to evoke a feeling. If it's a horror game, you should have unsettling music to heighten the tension. If you have an adventure game, you want music that gives you a sense of grandiosity and heroicness. It would be impossible to imagine video games without these incredible pieces of music that have accompanied them for years. And with all that being said, after putting our entire video game puzzle together, I think we're at a crossroads. Like most forms of media, video games have gotten to a point where they are a commodity above all else. Obviously, that has always been the point of video games, is to sell them to people to make money so you can make more games. It feels like that used to mean making the best game you possibly could, and now it's just how can we cut as many corners as possible and get as many sales as possible. Some of the biggest gaming companies in the world don't see these games as handcrafted pieces of art. They see it as another paycheck. Another way to shovel product into consumers' mouths while keeping their shareholders happy. Another way to get $70 out of a customer's pocket every year, and I think people are tired of it, and I think that's proven by how successful so many indie games have been in recent years. So many passion projects that small teams have put together and reach heights of quality that many AAA games can't today. And this is great. There's so many of these teams that deserve all the success in the world. And this should be a lesson to these companies, that having all these resources at your disposal could mean making incredible games that no one else could. But that's just such a rare occurrence now. I know it's just wishful thinking, but I really hope that these companies can reflect and understand why people play video games. Video games created an entertainment experience unlike anything before. It allows you to take a break and step into a world like no other. You are at the helm. You are the one solving puzzles and pulling off combos and defeating bosses, and you are the one experiencing these stories firsthand that no other media can achieve. It is a miracle that so many writers and artists and musicians and programmers and designers can all come together and commit so much time and effort into an experience that you could remember for the rest of your life. And when people put it off as just a waste of time or something that doesn't deserve attention, it makes me sad. I think art is important, and art reflects us and our incredible sense of wonder and creativity. Since the beginning, we have created some incredible art as humans. And to cast aside one that so many people pour so much time and talent into is simply a shame. I love video games, and I have so many fond memories that I will cherish, and I hopefully will have so many more memories to come. So next time you hop into a game, try and appreciate everything about it. The sound effects, the movement, the level design, the music. Think about all these people who crafted this piece of entertainment for you to enjoy. And remember, video games are art.